and happy Friday. We just wanted to get on and join you guys for a few moments, so thank you for joining us this Friday. Got a little bit of sunshine, might be a little chilly if you're here in Illinois, but we wanted to kind of talk to you just for a few moments about some of what we can expect in 2020. Once we do all crawl out of hiding, we have a few trends that you guys are going to want to be aware of and things to be thinking about. I saw a hint of it already rocking through the schools a bit, so Natalie, you go girl. Bangs are back. That fringe is back. 70s fringe is really where they're taking it to. We will start to talk to you guys a bit more perhaps next Friday on some color techniques and things that we can do to kind of brighten up around the perimeter and think about style and color placement. But today I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about some of our friends. And when I say friends, yes, the 90s are back, which means your favorite friend, one of our influential hairstyles from the 90s, the Rachel, is coming back. So unlike her early 90s counterpart, this version is a little bit softer. So some things we're going to be saying goodbye to are those really hard diagonal forward angled bobs. We are still going to be rocking those blunt bobs. We are going to go back to the days of chunkier highlights and panels of color. So those soft balayage and all these things we've been perfecting, we need to kind of flip the script and start practicing some other things. So again, a good opportunity to practice some of these things as we are sitting home with a few bits of moments of time on our hands. So without further ado, I'm going to teach you a little, don't want to say shortcut, but a little bit quicker way to do a softer version of our friend Rachel. So you guys will notice that we are already somewhat subdivided here. And what we're doing is, again, a profile or vertical section from her perimeter. Okay, so we look at that apex area and we're going to split the hair. When we start to talk about layers or shape, again, you always want to think about directional fall and where this hair is going to fall. So my friend doesn't have any shoulders, but all the people you guys are going to be cutting eventually will have those. So when we think about a shape, you want to think about what's going to live in front of her shoulders. And you want to really make sure that that break happens there. Our friend the mannequin has a little bit more hair here than some of our clients would. So being really mindful of where that break or that separation is going to be. Can anybody tell me what this is actually called? Where are we sitting here? Don't be shy, guys. Okay, so we are at that high point or that apex of the head. So what we're thinking about is everything that sits in front of this section is going to naturally want to fall over the shape of the head. That is also where we're looking at that break behind the ear as to what's going to fall in front of her face. So if we take this too far back, we're going to be bringing hair forward and really kind of pushing her hair away, where what we're trying to create is that broken shag look in the front of her face. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. As we do this, I'm going to step out of the way so you guys can see what's going on. But we're going to start with really just taking a small triangle from the very front. You guys have all probably seen some interesting things out there in the industry. People throwing bowls, people throwing colanders around their head and just taking that perimeter. We're going to stay away from that. But you'll notice that even as she's starting to dry on me a tiny bit, that she's getting that pop. Hers isn't exactly natural fall. Hers is, whoever stitched her in the stadium that she came from. But what we're going to want to do is take this small triangle on either side and be bringing this forward. Again, thinking about where you're going to be. If you were working on a guest, you can't sit in the chair with her, so we have to be mindful of being in front of her. As we start to cut, we also want to think about elevation. So where are we going to want this first shape to live? What's trending right now is not quarantine bangs. What's trending right now is more of that 70s push to that cheekbone, even within the jawline, and that's where we're starting things. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take this and test our elevation. Okay, so we're going to check our length somewhere between her lip line and her chin. Okay, so as we go to do this, being mindful that that's going to pop a bit when it dries, and the difference between cutting here and we're actually going to elevate and cut it up here. So what do we get when we elevate as opposed to cutting down at that 0 degree? That elevation is going to give us that softness. So not as hard of a line. So we're going to go ahead and just cut this And this is now going to become the perimeter length for my haircut. Okay, again, this isn't going to be drastic. Would you consider that a fringe? Depends on who you are. But this is kind of the start of that Rachel shape. Again, this shape is somewhat iconic because it is good for bone structure for a lot of people. It gives you that volume in the top, tapers in, and kicks back out. So what you're going to see is really very much a diamond shape. Okay, so it's the opposite of that. So it really creates a lot of balance within where it's going to sit on her face, where we're going to see the volume, and where we're going to see the indentation. So this is going to be a form of graduation. And that term with graduation, what we're talking about is cutting short to long. So I'm not going to work with that same elevation. What I'm going to work into is my profile section. So again, I told you, I want to make this quicker. You guys know I talk quick anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and cut on the side that you guys are on. What we're looking for is, I'm going to step over here just to stay out of the way of all the cameras. And we're going to work through that parietal ridge area. And what I'm looking for is an area where the hair is going to hang flat. Okay, so I'm going to work above that ridge for this first section. On a client, you're going to end up with a lot more hair in through this top section. On a mannequin, she tends to be heavier in through this perimeter as opposed to the top perimeter. What I need to be doing with this section is being mindful of my elevation. And what I really want to do is push this hair to my center section. Okay, in the past we may have over directed this backward, but we're really going to push this up and over. This is going to be cut with the heel of my shear. Okay, terminology is important, that we are mindful of what we consider the tips compared to the heel. Okay, I know that some of you have other terms for that, and we're not going to use those. What part of your shear? When we cut paper, we know that we go in and we chomp away at it. So as we're learning to cut first, that's where we go. We tend to tell you to cut with that first portion of your shear or the tips. This technique is never going to be a completely closed technique. We're going to work through just that heel or right by the screw set. Okay, so I'm going to push this. At this point, I can see where my guide is, and we're going to increase the layer of this cut as I work. So as I let this drop out, my fringe will drop out. And again, I want to cut from short to long. I'm never completely closing my shear, and I'm going to work until I'm positive that this length will drop around the back of her head. Okay, so what you're going to see on this technique is that we're going to definitely cut from shortest to longest. Okay, so what is that going to give me when this hair drops back down and comes around the shape of her head, but that nice fringed out increase. Okay, so we are converging up over the shape of her head, and we're cutting from short to long, which means she's shorter in the front and longer towards the back, but we've also traveled up. So she's shorter on the top than the hair that had to travel to get there. Okay, so I told you this is going to be quick and easy, which means what we're starting to see already is this nice 70s fringe looking shape. To keep this technique super clean, we're going to do the same thing with the next section. Okay, so again, you want to be mindful of your center because we don't want to push past. If you push past, what will you get? A little more length. Again, every client is going to be a little bit different. Every head shape is going to be a little different. But what we want to do is make sure we have nice control over this section and that we push up to where that length is. If you can see my guide starting to drop out, that is my goal. Okay, so I'm going to push this section up, being mindful. I can start to see the shadow of what I cut before, and I'm going to continue with that same shape. Okay, again, cutting short to long with what I've done. As we wrap this back around, again, you see that nice soft shape starting around the front, but we've maintained this length. This length comes from making sure that we're cutting and that elevation comes all the way up. So it's going to wrap around, come back down. In the past, people would say, don't cut the corner out of my shape. So when people are looking for length, they don't want that length to happen just in the front and look like they have shorter hair. It's like, oh my gosh, where'd my hair go? They want to make sure that that corner or what's going to sit in front of the shoulder is there. Okay, so an easy way, obviously, to continue this look is to take this little bit, Switch this over and continue the same technique on the other side. Again, being mindful where you're at in position with your client, making sure that as you switch sides that you're switching technique. Again, hand position and body position are going to be important, but it depends on how ambidextrous you are, whether you can set your shear in and walk. A lot of people, as they try to set your shear in and walk backwards, tend to flatten out. So if you can't, some people might have a pivot set. So if you can't pivot and walk, or if you find yourself cutting, that's why we start on mannequins. If you find yourself completely closing, then you're going to want to switch to the other side so you can use the exact same technique. Traditionally, you would pivot and cut on one side and you turn your shear and go up the other side. We definitely can't cut top down because we want to cut short to long and push that weight. So again, we're going to go ahead and elevate. If you want to continue with the same technique, we're just going to work this way. If you guys are more comfortable or you want to challenge yourself this Friday, you're going to set your shear in, get to your guide, and work out to your top length. And we're seeing that we're still cutting short to long through that shape. Okay, I'm going to continue through this section. Again, checking it out, checking for balance, and things that we're thinking about at this time. We're looking to see where it's sitting. We're looking to see visual balance. I know a lot of times we're so focused on this one is 7 inches, this one's 7 inches, this is 14, this is 14. You also want to stop and pause, thinking about natural growth patterns, hair flow, hair stream, and the texture. You see her texture is kind of playing a little fun in here. So we're looking to see, do we have a nice visual balance from side to side as well? Being mindful, maybe my client parts on one side or the other. I can adjust my technique, correct? Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and finish this side. And I'm going to do it from this side because this is where your camera is. And take those corners. Okay, at this point you guys would have options. Our traditional Rachel had quite a swell to the back and quite a bit of kick. And we also went in and broke it up in the back. This version for 2020, a little softer, a little more forgiving. So what we're going to do at this point is take your part that you had before, move your front section out, but cheat a tiny bit. So my first section sat directly behind my ear. I'm actually going to take a little piece of that with me now and push just to the ear. Okay, so making sure that I'm traveling some of that guide back with me. And again, using the same sectioning, that same round to the head and sectioning through the panel. So a lot of times just setting your comb in, and where you're tipping in is where you're going to create that. So it's where the two leave, we create a corner. We want to then invert on that corner, and that's where that parietal ridge is going to be. Okay, so the section that we want to cut. Again, we're using the same technique, using the same center section, and we're going to take the hair up. Finger angle, body position, these are all things we want to consider. And at this point, it's customization. So how do we want this haircut to live? Do we want it to be, a little bit more of a square angle? Clearly, my friend does not have a lot of hair back here. If she had a little more hair, we could kind of go up and continue this line that we've started creating to get that nice shape and softness in the back. Those of you that are with us, that were with us when Rachel was popular, know that we were working through that back in more of an inverted finger position. Okay, thinking about graduating through the bottom as well. The 2020 version is really a softer look. So if you have the length to do so, we can just go in and break it off. But if you don't have if you have extra length, we can continue the line. She doesn't really have any. So all I'm going to do is kind of clean up her section. Again, we haven't touched the perimeter of this, and the detail on that is something that's really up to choice. So your personal choice as to how you want to handle this. But thinking about continuing that line, we would just work in that same technique, coming in and breaking out these individual pieces. Okay, but since she just has a few weak ends, we're just going to go in and kind of snip off those few little weak pieces. Okay, so my client, again, fresh from the box, doesn't have anything as far as weight in through the bottom, and she's very soft in through there. So what I would be doing is just coming in, taking a look, and visual length. a lot of times you're kind of going to determine based off of what your client's style is going to be. So we're going to kind of take a look at what are my weak ends, what is it that's, you know, the blown out shape, where is it sitting to the bottom. So a lot of this technique in through the back, many times what we were doing in the Rachel day was coming in and, like I said, in an inversion, breaking out some weight. Using chunking and channeling, but this is a much softer, more feathery, kind of 70s. Like I said, the 70s are kind of coming back. So we want to think about that soft and feathery. We will talk a little bit, we'll have her styled for you guys next week, and we'll talk about a nice color placement for this type of look. Because what we're really looking at is that fringy, kind of flipped around the face. Back in the day, those of you that were with us know that she also wore it in kind of the zigzag pattern. Nobody had anything but a zipper going through the back, using some pomade and separating out some pieces.
Some people, our younger students, would like to know, who's Rachel?
Who's Rachel? You guys have Netflix, right? Okay. Friends, Jennifer Aniston. Okay, so if you guys want to check out The Rachel, all you have to do is Google The Rachel. I'll tell you, her celebrity hairstylist hated the fact that it became The Rachel. But if you go ahead and check her out, it really became such a popular, because Friends was such a popular trending show. Everybody was watching it. Everybody loved the combinations of people. They could relate to them. Obviously, they were a very well-paid franchise by the end. But hers was one of the looks that just day in and day out, at least 3-4 times a day, working in the salon, like, I want mine like Rachel. I want the Rachel. So apologies. You guys are making me feel old. Not even Friends. You clearly don't know who Dorothy Hamill is. But what we're looking at is really just that inverted shape. So what's going to become popular this next year, like I said, the looks that are coming back, we're getting those soft, feathery, textured shapes. They're going into a lot of shag style shapes where it's kind of disconnected. And you've got, you know, that silhouette that kind of blows up, tucks in, and then kicks back out. It is a very flattering shape or design shape to a lot of face shapes. We're also seeing just slight little flips and ends. So we've got that, not quite Farrah Fawcett curled, but we've got, Google her too, but we've got those soft pieces. And that's what we're starting to see is peaks of lights coming out from there too. So we'll talk about some hair painting. We'll talk about some of those trends. Another trend that's coming out too, we're getting into lots of pixies. And some of those pixies have that really long blown out fringe where some of them are nice piece detailed short ones too. So we can actually jump in and do a couple of those haircuts for you guys as well. Talk about some color placement and different ways to make that moldable flip back and forth. So again, those of you that weren't with us then, I'm sorry, but you guys can go ahead and check it out. The things that you guys will find throughout your career, things come and go. What happens is there's a resurgence. They kind of get a feeling. When somebody talks about retro, it just means today's polished version or our artistic take on something that was already there. If you think about it, we've got 3 cut shapes. You know, we've got solid, graduated, layered, but you've got a round, you've got the square. So as we start to look at this, it's how can I take that idea and get that same kind of feel? When the 80s came back, they weren't quite so plastic. The same thing is happening with this look. It's almost a hybrid between the 70s and the 90s. 90s was very grunge. Rusk and some of those chunky, channeled, piecey, blown out, waxed pieces. We're going to see some of those textures just not quite as harsh. So it's really taken a visual interpretation of what was and what can we do with it now. So we talk about design as an inspiration. So a lot of it is whatever you've done, you'll do again. You're in this industry long enough, you'll see it cycle around 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 times. So never stop practicing those techniques and never start looking at something as, what else could I do with it? So again, fast forward, short little version, a nice way to get a soft layered look. You're going to start to see a lot heavier around the face type of looks where we've got the heavier fringes, lots of texture around there. Some people still want that length though, so you won't see it disappear. But gone are going to be some of those strong diagonal forward lines, but we are definitely swapping those out for some super cute pixies this year. So I appreciate you guys joining us today, and look forward to seeing you guys again very soon. Happy Friday.